Hi, Jarrell. Welcome to Evolve Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you for having me, Joe. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Evolve Podcast is an open forum on personal growth and cultivating a positive mindset. Today, I have with me Jarrell Williams. He's the owner and primary creator of Namarama. Namarama is a business that supports other local businesses, primarily in Norfolk, Virginia, as well as other parts of Virginia. And I know there's some travel incorporated in that as well. Jarrell is also an advocate for Black voices. He is a co-creator with his partner Heidi. He's a father of two boys, and he's an advocate for the outdoors and adventure and exploring nature and being more in touch with that aspect. Jarrell, thank you for being here.
Yeah, man. Again, thank you for having me. We've known each other for a while, and you already know I love to talk, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had the pleasure of knowing you for some time now from a distance. We've had some personal encounters a couple times. When the first time when we met in Richmond, when you were visiting for a concert, and then a couple years later after that for another video project we worked on together. So it's great to reconnect with you and hear more about your story and how it's changed and evolved over time.
Yeah.
Before we met and to now.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Yeah. And, shout out to your brother Jamal. I'm sure he'll come up again. Great friend of the show. He was on the podcast last year, and we're happy to have you, his younger brother, on as part of the show as well.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So I gave a high-level overview of what you do. Could you give me a more specific, detailed, in the weeds summary of what you do with Namarama, and as well as the other content you create?
The way I explain it the most is I'm a mixed bag, or I guess now we are a mixed bag. Namarama is it's a reflection of my life, right? It's an example of what will happen when you bet on yourself and kind of let certain things go and trust the universe. And I have a vision for what I want to do, but I just let the ether kind of handle its business. So I started Namarama as a hobby. I want to say, I've been saying about 9-10 years ago, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it was around when I got into Instagram, like social media, a lot more regularly. And I was posting and doing research on chefs and just loved everything about local business, to where now today I highlight, I spotlight, I showcase local business, whether it's restaurants or boutiques, or working with destinations and different DMOs in Virginia. So initially it started out as predominantly in Norfolk and the 757, but we've gone way past that at this point. We did a gig with the Finger Lakes, New York last summer. We're actually going to Erie, Pennsylvania this summer on a gig. We just got back from Charlottesville, Virginia, 2 months ago on a gig with them. And as you mentioned, like starting off in Norfolk, I was labeled the food guy, right? I was the food plug because I came out the gate swinging, supporting local restaurants. And when I first started Namarama, again, it was a hobby. I was still working a corporate job, 9 to 5 grind, where at one point I was driving like 2 hours to work just to, get to work. And in that time frame, I worked my way up as an inside sales rep to become, a second in charge. I was a manager. I had my own team, and I would travel around the country, and I would go to conferences and trade shows and things of that nature, pitching and selling these different businesses that I worked for, multiple startup companies across the country. And in my travels, I would see all these different concepts and cool concepts and businesses that I thought were super dope. And I'd get back home and I'd look around and be like, well, why are we not doing those things here? Mm-hmm. So I took the inspiration and kind of put my own twist. And as they say, je ne sais quoi is how you say it, I guess. I'm not even sure. And delivered what I felt was important to me for the local businesses in that area. So case in point, my Munchie Market, for example, was a outdoor pop-up flea market bazaar situation that was like an incubator of sorts for small businesses. Mm-hmm. So for those who didn't have the capital to open a brick and mortar restaurant or say a food truck, but they had a legitimate concept of what they wanted to produce, I would then rent out space, equipment, whether it be grills, tents, tables, whatever they may need, and then I would bring them to a particular location, for example, a popular brewery, and I would pair them with multiple concepts. So it was a full-blown market where if you didn't know about these people, you could come to this market and price points were relatively low, so you were encouraged to try everybody who was at the market. I did a annual slider competition, which was 5 years running, and the idea behind that was, again, local love, to help local businesses expand their reach by bringing businesses from, say, Norfolk or from Virginia Beach and Hampton to Norfolk. So if you're from Norfolk and you don't really leave Norfolk often, come to this event and you're going to learn about a bunch of different restaurants who are in the same area. You can try them at the event, and now you know about them, you like them now, and you know where they are, so it's encouraged that you go see them after the event is over. Mm-hmm. I've done, you name it, I've done dozens of events in partnership with the city, botanical gardens, beer fests, restaurant takeovers. We've done all kind of stuff, Joe. I've got into all of this again just as a hobby, but what happened, it just changed my life, was, as with a lot of people, COVID. When I first went full time, I had worked my way. So I'll take a step back. Even working 9 to 5s, I did that until it got to a point where I was like, I'm gonna be able to sustain a lifestyle off of just what I'm doing. I can feel it. I know it's going to come. So I always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to do this. So I was working 9 to 5s, got promoted. also working with the city of Norfolk because they had approached me with the City with Bite concept. And around that, it's all a blur at this point now, but around that same time, VTC, Visit Virginia, had reached out to me because they've been following me for a couple of years and had said, hey, we've got this Wanderlove campaign that we've just released and we're launching to encourage people to get out and see more of Virginia. Restaurants are closing left and right. What can we do in support? And I said, well, there are still restaurants that are still open. I think it's important to not so much focus on the restaurants that are closing, but remind people that there are still tons of restaurants that are open and they really need our help now. Because remember, restaurants were doing full on like to go and only to go curbside pickup. So a lot of my businesses that I was working with for managing, they had to close up their doors or they cut their staff, tremendously in half or just a percentage of their staff. So at that time, VTC sent my family on a trip that literally changed my life, where we got to go to the eastern shore of Virginia, Chincoteague, Assateague, and Kiptopeak, and got to showcase all of it. Got to go to the restaurants, got to go to the stores, the museums, the hotels, the beaches, and really just show what it was to explore these areas and our true authentic perspective. And it was amazing. And then the opportunity was awesome. To be able to take the family was amazing. And then to be able to get this content that they were so appreciative for. And at the end, the end of it all was like, person of color, I'm a Black man, and for me, representation is everything. So to be able to be a focal point in this charge for Virginia was like, yo, sign me up, man. And again, that really changed this mosquito, excuse me. It really changed what work could look like. And then more cities were in my inbox. And at the same time, that's when City with Bite had finally released season 1, which we can talk about City with Bite more too. After that season 1 came out, things really exploded for me because that was the very first time a destination marketing organization had put together a project like this, like City with Bite, to promote a city in a series concept, if you will.
Okay. A lot to unpack there. First off, is VTC Virginia Tourism Commission?
Yep, that's them.
And that would be the employer for City with Bite?
VTC is the destination organization for the state of Virginia as a whole.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who was responsible for hiring you for City with Bite? Was that the city of Norfolk?
City with Bite was a City of Norfolk initiative in partnership with Visit Virginia. And I'll say Visit Virginia instead of VTC for more familiar connecting points. But
right.
Yeah, City of Norfolk had approached the organization S2E18 before COVID, and they had this concept of wanting to promote the city of Norfolk in its food capacity, breweries and distilleries, because this is my City with Bite punchline. Did you know that there are over 600 different restaurants, breweries, and distilleries in the city of Norfolk? Which I had no idea. I love the city, but I had no idea to what level there were so many local businesses in that industry. So City of Norfolk approached creative agency S2E18 and said, we got this, we want to do this, put together a concept for this. So S2E18 developed City with Bite. And at the time, my main contact was like, we had another guy that they wanted to use, and I know the guy he's a good dude, but I was like, this project is not going to do what you want it to do working with them. They're a good dude, but you need something a little bit more, in depth and more energy based. So S2E18 reached out to me as the host for City with Bite, which was through the city of Norfolk in partnership with the state of Virginia. So yeah, again, it's there's just so much, dude, so much.
What was your relationship with S2E18 like prior to them asking you to get involved with that project?
It was really good, actually. I've made it a point where before I went full time I've always been big on just like asking people, can I help with something, or can I be a part of something, or I'm interested in what you guys are doing. Would you mind showing me how this is or whatever? And then at the same time, as I was building out Namarama, I started to kind of get more of a name for myself, right? Where the events got the name out there and different content got the name out there. So I was getting reached out to by City of Norfolk reached out to by different production companies in Norfolk to do marketing gigs and stuff for the City of Norfolk, whether it was like being in a video shoot for a commercial for Norfolk, or being in a photo shoot for a magazine spread for Norfolk, or I even have done stuff with real estate companies where they've hired me and my family to step in as models and like, we live here, come buy a house here. I've done the Shenandoah Beer Works Trail, which was super cool to be able to get that a couple years ago. So my face was getting around. Oh, and on top of that, I also did commercial photography modeling, right? Where you may see me in like a Ritz cracker ad, or if you're at Verizon, you'll see a picture of me at Verizon or different things. So people were getting familiar with who I was, even if they didn't know who I was. So, and that's my hustler spirit that came through with that respect. So, I was already working with Sway for different projects, and then this came about, and they were already familiar with what Namarama was and who I was, and just came together, bro.
How did you get started doing commercial modeling? Did you work with an agency?
No, again, I'm big on just asking questions. So, man, this is back in college, 2000 and uh, 2008 or 9. Um, I used to. I'll tell you, this is a story. I was sitting in the student, like the web center at ODU, like the main student center, between classes, and a guy randomly came in with some cool sneakers. I used to be a big sneaker collector, and I saw him pull out a cardstock thing out his backpack. He put it on the cork board, and he walked away. And I waited for him to walk away, and I went to go check it out, and it was a flyer for a new store that was opening in Norfolk. So next day, I hop on my fixed gear bike, and I pedal over there, and he's in there, and I introduced myself to him. His name is Chris. Had a clothing store called Provision. So I was always a big fan of fashion and, clothes and whatnot. Hence, me and my brother, of course.
Right.
So working at Provisions, I got word about a local magazine by the name of Alt Daily that was looking for an intern for journalism. And I emailed them, was like, yo, I'm interested, and they brought me on board, and I went to the Alt Daily issue 1 release party at this dope apartment in Norfolk, and there are all these people there. I'm just talking with random people, and one guy that I meet, he's a photographer, and he's got credits with National Geographics and all these different amazing brands. And we hit it off. We exchanged numbers, and he's like, I would love to have like some help on set. And I was like, cool, give me a shout. So then like 2 days goes by, and he hits me up, and he's like, I wanted to do a photo shoot with you. And I was like, okay, whatever. So then we meet up, we get to know each other even more. And he's like, I have other projects that I'm working on that require me to get like models to then send those images. Bringing me on as a photographer's assistant, and I would hold bounces, and lights and stuff. And this is when I was still learning about photography myself. So I was in love with all of it, and I'm a sponge for knowledge when it's things that are interesting to me. So whatever he was doing, I was like, yo, his name is Roberto Westbrook. I was like, yo, Berto, call me, text me, book me, I'm there. And he would slide me some scratch, pay me some cash. And then I got to a point where I was so comfortable, he started putting me in front of the camera. And from that point on, it was just like, okay, I got a photo shoot for this brand, I'm in. I got a photo shoot for this brand, bruh, I'm in. And my focus there was I'm gonna get paid a few dollars off of these photo shoots, but like my face is gonna be out there. Even if you don't know me, you don't know Namarama, you're gonna recognize something about me and my being, whether it's my name, my brand, my face, whatever. And it worked. People started seeing me all over the place, Joe. I mean, I'm telling you, textbooks, commercials, advertising. I mean, billboards in subway trains in New York, and they were texting me and sending me pictures. Yo, you're in this. I'm like, yep, that's me. It's your boy. It's your boy. So that was like, it was a lesson that I learned where I got to a point where I recognized it was getting my likeness was getting used so much, right?
Right.
But I wasn't making any residual income off of it. That I was like, okay, it was cool, but like, gone are those days of like getting myself out there in that respect. If that answers the question, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And when you were participating in those photo shoots, do you know like what they were going to be used for?
Yeah. So the way it works is, and any photographer can get into this technically. So what happens is you work with certain like stock imaging websites, right? And on those websites, you either pay a subscription base to get access to the information. So businesses like corporations, and I'll keep using Ritz Cracker as an example, right? Or Coca-Cola. So they will then share what they're looking for as far as like a photo. And you as a photographer take that information. Okay, they want a shot of a guy wearing this kind of hat doing this, right? And then from there, you submit your photos to those portals, and the companies then can search through them and say, okay, I like this photographer's work. I'm going to buy this photo from this photographer to then run it and use it however I see fit. So it's like Berta would tell me these are stock imaging shoots. I don't know who's going to end up using them until they pay for the photo, but like your photo will be used in whatever capacity. But he always promised me it wasn't going to be used in like a negative fashion, like nothing bad or anything of that nature. So I was okay with it. People would always ask me, what if they put your photo on something weird? It's like, it never happened, right? So it was like, it's a risk that I was willing to take, and it served me what I needed to do to serve me.
Yeah. And while that was happening, you were building your personal presence online on social media as well. Yep. You know, create more of that brand recognition.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm familiar with All Daily. I know Jesse, the former editor in chief. I don't know if he still is or not. But he's a good guy.
Jesse Scacia.
Yeah, that's him.
And then there was it was him and Hannah Serrano are the ones that were partners that started that magazine. And that was a cool experience too. I mean, they got me in a couple different like concerts where I was like press at the Lupe Fiasco concert. I got to get a press pass and got to go take photos of Lupe in concert. I interviewed a couple local artists at different museums and whatnot. I did a bunch of write-ups and stuff like that. That got me a job working with, I forget the skate magazine, but I was doing advertising sales for a smaller skateboard magazine that was really cool for a bit. I've done a lot, Joe, and just it's cool to think back on it, man.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm curious, were you interested in journalism, or were you just looking to create content?
I did a lot of journalism. That's kind of what jump started a lot of this. Like I said, working with Alt Daily was like before Namarama. So, I've always been a fan of the culture. You know, I've always wanted to be part of the culture. I mean,
you are part of the culture. There's no.
I very much so am now, 100%. But when I was, figuring out, as they say, I was figuring out who I was, right? I was a kid who was in college, didn't want to be there. And I was collecting sneakers, and I loved skate culture. I loved art. I loved sticker art, and Kid Robot and LRG were huge back then, and blogging was huge back then. I was a big time blogger, to where I would see things that were super inspiring in, again, in different parts of the country that I didn't see happening where I was, and I just wanted to be a part of it so bad that any way that I could find a level of like cross section where I was like, yo, I'm a hit them up and just see what they say. My dad always told me, don't be afraid to ask questions, and I'm not. And I always say, like, they can either say yes or they can say no. And it's like, all right, I'm gonna just keep on moving regardless.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was just natural curiosity and being willing to just jump up and be like, yo, I love what you're doing. Like, do you have opportunities in this respect? Do you need a journalist? Do you need a photographer? And as I was doing that, I was very much so learning more about how to do those things. And bruh, I'm here now. You know what I mean? It's
Absolutely.
wild.
In starting Namarama, was that something similar to something you saw somewhere else that you wanted to bring to this area?
Yes. From multiple different capacities. So you're familiar with Vice Network, right?
Yes.
So through and through, Guy Fieri is like big inspiration. Food Network, he's like the OG, of course. But like when I came across Vice and their and all these guys were bringing culinary into light in a different way. It was gritty, it was real. It was very much so for the culture, and I loved it. I loved every minute of it so much that I would email and message that dude Shane, who owned it then, like all the time. So I started researching the chefs and the hosts of the shows, and I would digest all of their content. I'd watch everything. I would read articles about them. I'd read their books, and I was doing copycat burger nights with local beer at my parents' house where I am now. And I would go get local beer from the different breweries, and I'd come back home, and I would make a burger from the restaurant that I was inspired by that week, and I would do a copycat of it, and I would serve it to my friends and my family, and I would do that over and over, because that's what the guys on these shows were doing. They were very much so just taking something that was inspiring to them and adding their own twist to it. And yeah.
How old were you when you were doing that?
What am I, 34 now? Maybe 20. I was in my 20s, 23, 24 maybe.
Okay, so this was after college?
Yes, this is after college.
Okay, that's interesting. I've seen a few Munchies episodes, but one of my favorites is episode that they did with John Joseph. He's the lead singer of the Cro-Mags, which is a hardcore punk band.
Okay.
It was about him as a vegan triathlete.
Okay.
Ironman races.
Yeah.
And when I first saw that, it didn't make me want to go vegan right away, but it definitely planted a seed that has been like very formative in my development as I matured and chose to go vegan in 2017, and had like a goal of doing triathlons, which I've started to pursue this year. So it's super cool. They put out great content. It's very edgy. They're not afraid of cursing in that, and lots of tattoos and stuff like that. So it's really great. And I'm curious to know, like, when you were doing your burger and beer pop-ups at your house, were you filming any of that content too?
No.
When did that
I wasn't. So what I wanted to do initially with Namarama was to be a burger pop-up. Like I said, I loved these guys and their delivery because they were just cool chefs, right? They were creators, they were makers, and I thought, still to this day, the mind of a chef still blows my mind, right? So I was like, okay, well, like, I don't want to jump into the ring as like a poser. Like, if I'm going to be here supporting restaurants and chefs, like, I gotta test out my chops and see what I can do. So that's why I was doing the copycat burger nights. So the very first thing I did outside of that was a burger pop-up back in like 2013 maybe. My homie Mike got me an opportunity at this like pho restaurant in Virginia Beach after they closed. And yeah, 2012, 2013, I was doing like ramen burgers. I was, smash burgers. But it was like it wasn't a disaster, but I was like burning burgers. I was serving burgers a little more raw than I would have liked, and I learned very quickly that I'm not a chef, right? I can't do it to that capacity. At least at that time, I couldn't. So I was like, well, I still very much so like love the mind of a chef. So what else is there that I can do? And I was like, I can just support these individuals. I can bring a spotlight to them. And at the time, I didn't have like I'm myself. I have my name always, but like I didn't have the Namarama brand to lean on, or like no one knew who I was. And that's why I said when I first started this, it was a hobby, and like really big passion for just local business and support of them. And I got out there, and I would find these restaurants that, in my opinion, were deserving of spotlight and shine, but they weren't getting it because they didn't have the budget to pay for marketing. They didn't have the budget to bring a PR firm in to help them. Um, and what I learned from Geico, funny enough, was the low cost provider was a tagline that they used to use. Geico was the low cost provider, delivering savings, but allowing people to save money. So I thought, this is cool. These businesses, they don't have a ton of budget, but I have a concept that could benefit them. So I would come into their restaurant, take a few photos here and there, make a post. And that's when things started to snowball. They started to build up from there. And I realized once the restaurant started inviting me to them to host me and my family, and then I started putting a dollar amount, and they were like, no problem. And I was like, okay, up it a little bit, but still make it to where it's set. And that's when the cities were picking up on me. And again, the beer fest were having me promote them and partner with them, and so on and so forth.
And that was all driven from your social media content?
Yep, social media. And it's wild to think that, like, not even wild, but it just goes to show, like I said before, when you bet on yourself, you really I've always had a vision. I want to be part of this culture in this industry somehow. I don't know how to do it, but I know these are interesting to me, and I did it. And I'm true to myself. And don't get me wrong, I had people who were calling it dumb and saying it was a waste of time, and oh, you're ridiculous, you look silly. Is like, okay, that's cool, but I still enjoy it.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of it was based off of social media. And yeah, I was educating businesses on like why to use social media, all of that.
Good for you, man.
Thank you.
It takes courage to, stick to your guns and really trust yourself when you're trying to do something that a lot of people are telling you you probably shouldn't do.
No,
But
facts.
you had a vision for what you wanted to build, and you trusted that vision. So that's
Right.
awesome.
You've heard the same sayings, like, we not put on this earth to just work for somebody else and die, bro. Like, I knew from an early age that wasn't going to be my fate. I've always known I was going to build something. What it was going to be, I didn't know. I ran clothing companies back in high school and early years of college. Again, I did photography and light video work and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I always knew, I was like, I'll get a job, but like, this is not it for me. So when the idea of Namarama came around, there wasn't really any foodie influencers. There wasn't anyone doing this in my area. So I created a lane for myself, and I gas pedal all the way down, and I'm still, again, blown away by the kind of stuff we get to do these days, man. For real.
Thanks for watching Evolve Podcast. This episode is brought to you by our sponsors, True Nutrition. Use Evolve Podcast to get 5% off all True Nutrition supplements. I'm personally a fan of their soy isolate vegan protein powder, available in a variety of flavors and strengths from light to heavy. They also have non-vegan protein powders if that's not your thing. I recommend the cookies and cream flavor in heavy strength, and I add it to waffles, oatmeal, and protein shakes. They're delicious. Check out their wide range of supplements at affordable prices that are third-party tested and verified for content quality. They are able to provide such great prices because their supplements come direct from the manufacturer without any marketing gimmicks or fancy labels. Visit TrueNutrition.com to supplement your workouts and nutrition. Use code EvolvedPodcast to get 10% off all weight train and athleticity gym gear and apparel. No matter what you need for your workouts, they have the gear to help you get it done. They have great clothes for the gym wear, for men and women. Visit weighttrain.com for all your gym gear needs. Last is not dead yet. Use code EvolvedPodcast to get 15% off all clothing and accessories. The goat shorts and shirts are some of the most comfortable clothing I've ever worn, and they have the coolest designs. However, their drops are only available in limited quantities, so get your favorites while you can, and be on the lookout for other drops you're stoked on. Visit notdeadyet.com for clothing to remind the world you are not dead yet. Now, back to the show.
You mentioned your friend Mike, who I know was a business partner with you on Namarama. Is he still involved?
No, not these days. Aside from just being supportive, he's still the homie of mine. I still call him my brother. But Mike was a huge integral part of Namarama's build-up when it came to the events, man. I'm an ideas guy, as is he, but he's very much so a details guy, right? Where I was doing events for a couple years, and he said to me, I'm going to help you. He didn't ask. He was like, I see you're doing a lot, and I know I can help you, so I'm going to help you. And to this day, I just wholeheartedly appreciate everything that he did. And he did it just because he loves me, man. He's my homie and he's my brother, and he just wanted to see me succeed. And for multiple events, he would be the one who was there, like getting coordinating details down and following up with certain people and reminding me to touch base with certain people, especially when it came to the munchie markets. He would be inventory management, you know what I mean? Okay, you're renting out this tent to this person, make sure you get that deposit. They didn't pay the deposit, make sure you hit them up and make sure they pay this and that. And dude, he's an amazing dude. He's super busy.
I've had the chance to meet him, connected with him the last time we met. And I know he's a photographer as well, so yeah. I'm sure that's keeping him busy.
And he did a lot of photography for Namarama from jump. He was my shooter. Mike was my shooter. He did a lot of the events earlier on. He would help with coordination. He would always also bring his camera. Always, whether it was his cell phone or his Canon. And that's my man, yo.
Love it. And now you partnered with Heidi, who's your partner. She's involved with Namarama as well, right?
Yes, very much so. Heidi Joy, that's my butterfly. That's my life partner, my business partner. And similar to how Mike was very detail oriented, Heidi Joy is very detail oriented. It's funny because like people talk about like finding like your better half or like your other half, where like, again, very much so an ideas person, but she also loves like the detail of like email, creation and whatnot, and calendars and booking dates. And it's like, she loves it. So I give her that. She feeds off of it. So she develops ideas with me. We bounce ideas back and forth with each other. She's got her own brand called Heidi Love that she is amazing at her creation, arts, immersive galleries and workshops. But together, I feel unstoppable, bruh. Like, we've known each other for years, like friendly, cheering each other on from the sidelines. And then the way we met was actually I was running Namarama. And have you been to Selden Market in Norfolk?
I haven't had a chance to. I'm familiar with it, and I heard about it when it opened.
Yeah.
When you were describing the Munchies Market, it sounded very similar to that concept of having like businesses come in and rent space to like test out their concepts.
Yeah, it's very much so that they're inside, and they did initially it was just like retail. Then they opened it up to do like light food, and now it's like a good mixture. So when it first opened, a brand by the name of Vessel Craft Coffee, a friend of mine, Sarah Cowherd, she had approached me through Instagram, just out of the blue, was like, "Hey, I love what you're doing through Namarama." She was just starting Vessel at this time. I'm starting a new coffee brand called Vessel, and I would like some help. And we had spoke, a couple times, and then she ended up getting to the point where she was about to open up her coffee shop in Selden Market. And Heidi Joy was the woman that she hired to manage the shop. So at that time, Sarah had hired me to shoot her commercial for Vessel Craft Coffee. So I ended up going to Vessel one day, and Heidi Joy was there, and I was like, "Yo, what's up? I'm Jarrell. I'm Namarama." And she's like, "Who? I don't know who you are," right? So, jump years later, she's always in support, like commenting, and she ended up pulling up at one of the slider competitions for Vessel Craft Coffee. They were a sponsor, and she's again in the distance. She's met the family years ago. We've been good friends for years. She had her own thing going on. She was in the wedding industry for like a decade. So I was always like, "Yo, keep going! Like, you're a hustler. You're killing it." And then the universe shifted, and we both became available, and started off as just really good friends, and now we are head over heels in love, and in business, in family, and just loving life. It's amazing.
Proud of you. Good for you guys. That's great. I want to talk about that universe shift a little bit, if you're open to that.
Yeah, let's dive into it.
Yeah, I know you used to be married to another person.
Yep.
And you're not anymore. And, I know your life, as one does, had to take a major overhaul as a result of that.
Yeah.
So, can you talk about what that experience was like for you and what perspective you've gained from it since then?
Absolutely. I would be happy to. Especially because this topic is such a it's like it's a weird thing to talk about in certain cases, but I learned a lot about myself, Joe. I learned a lot about myself, and like I mentioned before, like finding out who I was, and wanting to fit in a certain like box or like in a certain type of culture for so long. I met my ex in college, and it was one of those things where, being a kid from Fredericksburg, Virginia, I moved to the Hampton Roads, and she showed me the beach and different things that I thought were really cool. So then now jump to like our first child, was like, this is it. This is life. Blah, 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 And then I started working, and I was checking those boxes. I mentioned before, coming from corporate, and a lot of it was doing what I thought I was supposed to do for society, and not so much for myself. And I'll talk about it, bro. Like, I've said this before, where if it weren't for my first child, she and I probably wouldn't have been together as long as we had been. I listened to a lot of people and their suggestions. Even one from my father would always say to me, "Happy wife, happy life," right? To where I did everything in my power to try to bring a level of joy to both of us. And I recognized, personally, it wasn't my job to do that for someone else, to make them happy. I can't make somebody happy. But at the same time, I wasn't happy. And I realized, if I'm not going to make somebody else happy, and I'm doing all this work and I'm not happy myself, then what am I doing it for, right? So I took a step back. Again, I was working and I was checking those boxes. I was getting those bonus checks and I was going on those annual trips, all expenses paid. And, it was great, making good money, houses and cars and whatnot. But again, wasn't happy, dude. So not until I took life by the horns, right, as they say, and started doing more things for me that brought me joy while also taking care of my responsibilities, i.e., my children. So I know my truth. I know who I am. I know what I'm doing. So when my days came around, like Father's Day or my birthday, for years I did things as a family. But I was like, you know what? This is my day. I want to do something for myself. So I would take off. I would go on long drives by myself. I would find trails to hit by myself. I would go on camping trips here and there by myself. And it wasn't until I gave myself the ability to be by myself that I learned how to be myself. Every day we are targeted some kind of something, whether it's through radio, TV, for sure through social media and your phones. And when you can disconnect entirely and for lack of better words, exit this matrix and put yourself in, for my example, nature, disconnect and reconnect with, for me, things that really matter. So I would go on these walks and I would zoom out and I would zoom back in, micro, macro. Wow, this tree is amazing. This breeze feels fantastic. Wow, look at the birds. The petrichor, the rain is about to come out. This is dope. And I started having thoughts. Things started coming to mind that were not influenced by somebody else or something else. And that's where I say I learned about who I was and what came to mind for me and the things that I wanted to do. So I got to a point where, I said to myself, okay, if things don't change in this relationship from this point in time to this time, I'm going to have to make a big change. And I say this very, very strongly. I in certain respects attempted to leave multiple times before, but again, society, dude, as a young black male who got a white woman pregnant, I was like, my back's against the wall. I had a college degree. I had no real job. I couldn't keep a job. I kept getting laid off, all these different things. And I was like, okay, now with not having a stable place of employment, I'm going to now be lumped in like a black guy who knocked up a white woman and like we're no longer together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, society was a lot of the reason as to why I did what I did in the past. But to recognize it's not necessarily important what society thinks of you, but what is more important is what you think of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what I say, dude. Everyone's got something beautiful inside of them. It's just a matter of time before you figure out what it is and you go for it. So yeah, we called it quits, and it's been interesting to say the least. But I'm moving, bro. I'm developing. I'm loving life. I've got a new leaf on life, as they say. I've got my glasses off today, but I got a new set of glasses on how I view life. And I told myself, if I'm not sound in mind for myself, I can't be sound in mind for my kids. And that was the biggest reason as to why I made the decision. I was like, I'm not happy. I don't feel good. I don't feel good about myself. Something's got to change. And I wasn't going to point blame at her and say, you're not making me happy. I hold my happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't the best decision for everybody, but it was the best decision for myself and my family.
Sounds like you made the right decision.
Man.
I'm sure sometimes you question that, but I think a lot of that does come down to, like you said, the societal expectations and falling into that stereotype of the black dad that left his white wife, and everyone struggles with those those thoughts about like, who am I? Who do I want to be? And I know, like, especially for people of color in that scenario, like that challenge, that conversation you have with yourself is so much more difficult, especially when you're concerned with how others are going to perceive it. I would say in general, for white people, maybe there isn't that perception or stereotype as much, but I don't know. I guess that varies on a case by case basis. I think it all comes down to like how you were raised too. But what are the family dynamics like of each individual's in-laws? And
it's funny.
Tricky, yeah.
I'm still very much so in touch with the in-laws or ex-in-laws. I actually took my ex-father-in-law's new wedding photos. So he's a widower. Unfortunately, my ex's mom passed years ago, from cancer. Miss her dearly. This is years ago. But he has recently found, a connection with a new woman who's amazing and brings him so much joy that shortly after, like, I chose to split, we still were communicating because he's still the grandfather of our kids.
Right.
I was like, yo, still want to keep this a good, relationship. I don't want to burn bridges. I don't dislike you, we just came to recognize that I had to make a change anyway. So months or so after, a year or so after, because I had met his new partner, this is before I left, and he shared with me that they were getting married, and they did a courthouse arrangement marriage, and didn't invite anybody else, but asked me to be there to take their photos and get video of them. And from that, he would invite me to the house to watch his house and to take care of his dogs when he was traveling with his new wife. And I say this and laugh about it because it drove my ex crazy, but it was like, hey, I'm not that bad of a guy if your dad is still like keeping in touch with me. And to this day, Joe, like, we still talk, we still text. I text his wife regularly. The boys are actually going over there for a week and like a week and a half, I think. So meanwhile, she don't care for me, but again, it doesn't matter at this point, taking care of my responsibilities. I know who I am. I know my truth, and I live my life with peace, positivity, and just prosperity, bro.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, of course, you have to do, what you need to do for the kids. They're the top priority, and it's good that you guys can at least be civil when dealing with them, and still have a good relationship with her family. Because family is so important. So it's great that those boys can, still have a relationship with him as they get older as well. And, having kids in a marriage, that complicates things too, right? Yeah. Obviously, that makes the dynamics of a changing relationship much more complicated. And, I don't have kids myself, but I'm aware of those dynamics, and I can empathize with you on that.
Yeah. And I think that's key, empathy, and I practice empathy every day. Every day. I didn't mention this earlier. You were asking, like, what was like the shift, and in my commute to work, I listen to NPR a lot, right? And for those who know NPR, National Public Radio, it's great programming. And they do that segment, which is called World News, right? Where I would listen to this and I would contrast and hard reflect on my life based off of what was happening across the world. Well, my life, work sucks and this is frustrating and da. But like, I'd be driving to work and I'd hear that a bomb went off somewhere, or a law was passed that prevents women from being able to get health care and things of that nature. And it's like, okay, not minimizing my experience, but in all things considered, hence NPR, all things considered, right? Things could be worse. That was my thought process before. It's like, okay, this is happening, but it could always be worse. Okay, this is happening, but it could always be worse. Where I started to contrast everything that I was doing compared to my previous life or what life could potentially be if I made some changes. So now, instead of saying it could always be worse, and I got the encouragement from our lady Heidi Joy, instead of saying it could always be worse, is this is great. Could it be better? Yes, darling, always.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good way to practice gratitude and look for opportunities for improvement, even if the current situation is not ideal.
Yeah, always something to be grateful for. I've just started recently doing a daily live on my Instagram that just is me talking about how great of a day I have every day, to encourage people to try to look at life that way in a different perspective, because everyone's going through something, dude. Everyone is going through something. No one is certain things are worse and whatnot, but like what I learned personally too is not to minimize your experience compared to other people's, because we all are going through something. So to help people find the joy in whatever it is that they're doing is so important. It's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole point of this podcast, to find joy in life and use that as fuel for personal growth. Finding growth with a positive mindset. That's what it's all about.
That's right.
You seem like a very positive person, and you're putting out positivity into the world, which is great. But I'm curious to know if you have ever struggled with depression or anything like that, any mental health issues that have like weighed you down from past negative experiences.
No, not depression. When I was younger, I used to have anger issues. My parents would tell me when I was like a teenager, I would just blow up. Any slight thing, if it was frustrating to me, I would just blow up, dude. And to the point of like my past relationships, where if you're in a relationship and someone, your partner will, typically speaking, know your buttons to push, right? And if that person is using those buttons to exploit your emotions, then my take on it is there's not as much consideration for your emotions from that particular person. So when things would get a little heated, that's when they would start to push buttons and make comments and claims of certain things, where I would just lose my cool. I couldn't communicate effectively at that point, where I would start to stumble and stammer over my words, and they would then pile on more, and I would get to a point where I just couldn't communicate, and I would just start to yell. I would get so angry that I would yell, and after I would yell, I would just get so embarrassed that I got to a point that I allowed someone to get me out of my zone, right? Where I just started to blow up. And then it got to a point where I would do that every now and then, where it was loud enough where my kids would hear it, and it wasn't often, but it was enough where like I was like, I can't keep doing this. Like, this is not helpful. This is not, good communication practices to teach my kids. And again, my parents had arguments. It's natural, but I come from a very supportive household. We talk, we care for one another, we support one another. So then to take a step back again and recognize, something's got to change. And I'm not going to say it's somebody else's fault that I'm losing my cool. You're making me so angry. It's like, nah, dead that. Like, I'm losing my cool because I'm losing my cool. And nowadays, I shock myself to where I am so cool, so level-headed. I'm calm. I am the peacekeeper in the house, in my parents' house. And I learned that from my dad, I think, because growing up, I never really saw my dad blow up unless my brother and I like really did something we weren't supposed to. And still to this day, my dad is cool as a cucumber most times. But even more so, I've learned to just not let things really get to me. And it's a learned trait. and I encourage my kids and anyone else where it's like, if things are out of your control, they're out of your control. You know, what you can control are things that have to do with you and, you know, your kids in certain respects. But like, somebody says something about you or does something that you don't like, it's like you can either choose to stew and sit in that anger and that frustration and hold a grudge, or keep it moving. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, I think Heidi Joy said it. It's like, that's like you taking poison, you drinking poison, and hoping that poison hurts the other person. That's what resent and that's what a grudge is. Where I was like, all right, well, I learned this. Was like, okay, I'm mad about these things, but yet still opportunities are coming my way and doors are still opening for me, and I'm still growing and thriving and living this true life for myself. So why put attention and energy into the things that frustrate me when I can put more energy into things that bring me joy and live this life for real, you know? And when Heidi Joy and I got together, bruh, trust me, we got hate. We got a lot of flack, especially because it was, in certain respects, sooner than other people would have liked it to happen, right? But it was like, this is my life, dog. You can't tell me how to live my life and what I'm going to do with my life, whether it's business related or romantic. This is what I want to do. And we got to a point where we were just like, people can be mad about something, but we want this lifestyle for everybody, for everyone to really feel what it feels like to be considered in every capacity, to feel what it feels like to just have such a deep longing love for each other, that you are in support of each other and you don't want to change the other person. You want to help build them up and amplify their greatness, you know?
Yeah.
It's beautiful, dude. My life is amazing, Joe. I love everything about my life these days. I wake up every morning grateful. We practice our affirmations and we talk about we are manifestors. We put things into the ether, into the universe every day. And things that I dreamt about when I was talking about those Vice and Munchie days, I do them today. Again, when you have a dream and you aspire for something, it's the hardest thing is to put a timeline on it. I want to be this level of success at this time of my age, because at the end of the day, it's like success is such a loose term, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it looks different for everybody, but I guess I'm kind of rambling now, but it's real, man.
Yeah, that's great. And with controlling your anger, what are your like practices for coping with that? Do you just let it go, or do you have like some sort of meditation that you do?
Now I've gotten to a point where I can just let it go. Things naturally, of course, I'm still human, will still frustrate me, right? But then I take a second every time and I think, okay, why is this frustrating to me? Okay, that's fair. It can be frustrating, but did somebody do something that caused me to feel a level of frustration? Okay, bet. So again, am I going to sit here and stew over it? Or am I just going to disassociate myself from that particular individual in that capacity and then keep doing what I got to do for my babies? Because at the end of the day, I do what I do for me and my babies, right? My kids. So, and I think it was Dame Dash that said it was like, I don't have time for drama. I don't have time, mental capacity for complaining. I don't have mental capacity for nonsense, because I'm there's a lot going on in my head already naturally. So then to fill my brain with things that bring me anger or angst or whatever is like, I don't got time for that, man. Like, I'm out here I'm out here moving. I'm out here making things happen. I'm out here taking care of my kids and being here for my babies every day and my lady and my parents. You know what I mean? It's like, there's so much more that I'm working toward that I don't have time or mental capacity to deal with that kind of stuff at all. Again, my tools were taking time for myself. That self-care is the best care. It's not selfish. Self-care is the best care, the most important care. So taking that time to go to the parks, taking my Father's days and my birthdays to go on trips by myself, to be by myself, to really take that time to reflect on life. Where am I right now? Where was I a year ago, 2 years ago, even 2 months ago? And where am I going? I don't know how to get there, but I know I'm going to be there How am I going to get there is less important, but why I'm doing this to get there is the biggest thing for me. And that is, I'm getting there for stability and comfort, whatever that looks like for anybody else, but for me and my family. And again, I'm back at home with my parents. Society says that's not a good thing, but bro, I'm loving it. My kids see their grandparents every day. We have dinner as a family regularly. We have breakfast. My son will make his grandmother breakfast sometimes. He makes me breakfast. You know what I mean? It's perspective, perception. My first tattoo is perception is reality, and I stand with that all day.
I love that. Perception is reality, and you have a great perspective on life.
Thank you.
I think that, you know, the concept of like moving back in with your parents and, you know, not having like a stable, home, that, some would consider a failure, but, it's really all about your perspective and like what are your intentions for doing that. And, not what you're losing, but what you're receiving as a result of that. And, I think our society and our culture has gotten to a place where everyone is realizing, we don't have to like keep up with the Joneses type of thing. You don't need the house with the white picket fence. Most people these days are opting for, a camper van and like living the van life.
Yep.
If you and Heidi Joy started to do that, I would not be surprised one bit, especially all the camping trips you guys do.
It's been a plan we've had for a while. Even before we got together, I almost bought a bus to do a schoolie build out. Mm-hmm. And that's when I was like, before I left my ex, I was like, maybe this will be the thing that brings us happiness. And I was like, well, we're going to sell this big house and then condense it down to a bus. I was like, that's not going to work. But no, that's exactly it, dude. And that's why I say, like, society will have people doing and acting out of pocket just to try to please other people. But at the end of the day, it's like you do so much to try to please others that you ignore yourself, And again, like, I've had cars, I've had nice clothes, I've had nice houses, all those things, but it didn't bring me the joy. And again, when I first moved out, I found a small little duplex in Norfolk that was in an older neighborhood of Norfolk that some people would say is not the greatest area, but I loved it. My neighbors were super cool. I lived a mile away from the beach. I could walk to the beach every day. Everything I needed was in my neighborhood, and it was way below my means. I didn't need fancy this. I had it. I've had, again, nice things, all this stuff. I don't need it. And you learn to live like a king when you can learn to live with nothing. And I'm resourceful. I reuse things. I repurpose stuff. I don't care, dog. If I could save some bread and save some money, I'm going to do it,
For sure. So what's on your plate, your focus right now? What you got going on with Namarama and the other projects that you're working on?
Yeah, we just released season 3 of City with Bite, so that's currently being promoted. Tourism. Again, we got a couple trips in the works before before the summer is over. Later this month, we've got the World Arts Celebration with the City of Newport News. I'll be hosting that, and my partner Heidi Joy is doing a Filipino history experience activation where she's educating the public on facts that maybe they didn't know about and teaching Tagalog. We've got more camping, summer camps and stuff for the boys. I'm working on a new show right now with WHRO, which is a PBS like subsidiary around environmental sciences, which is super dope. So excited for this opportunity. I actually leave tonight to go back to Norfolk for 2 days of shooting. From there, helping Heidi Joy flesh out more concepts and projects under her brand, High Joy Love. I mean, anything else that comes my way, I can't speak about it, I guess, publicly just yet when I was talking about before the call started. So stuff like that comes in my inbox pretty often. And I love it. So like to be able to say that I have inbounds coming to me on not like consistent basis, but relatively consistently. It's dope, dude.
Yeah.
Again, I went out on my own and it's been the best thing I've ever done for myself, aside from having kids, right? I love my kids, but like to take my life back and to really be an example for them that you can do anything, dude. You know what I mean? And we've seen all those cheesy motivational posters in elementary school up to high school, you know, but I feel like as kids, oftentimes we don't really listen to a lot of those messages, even the ones as simple as like put your mind to it, right?
Right.
What that really means is like this is all mental. Life is all mental, and perception is reality. It's real, bro. Like you want it, it's not gonna happen overnight. But if you set your mind to it, then you start to think of ways to make it happen, and you start to figure out ways to make it happen. And it's not going to be overnight. It's not going to be in a week, and you can't be looking for it to happen at a set time. But it will. What's going to happen will happen. The universe is going to open up for you. The laws of attraction, you know what that is. You know, all of that, dude. And I gotta share this. Jamal, at one point, my brother, he made a status right before I went full time, and was like, "You ever calculate your time and your effort and your energy for your job?" And that means calculating your commute to work, the nonsense you deal with, you know, the time wasted, you know, your money you spend for gas and your lunch. And it's like, after all those things are said and done, what are you taking home every day? And I did the calculations, you know, I did the math, and it was like something like $100 a day. And I was like, man, I can make $100 a day doing what I love, even more than, you know. And that's when I was like, all right, I've been doing these things, and I've been putting my foot forward for all these other companies and busting my butt for all these companies and doing all this stuff. And I was like, but what if I took a second and did it for me and poured that energy and time into me, for me? And here I am. I'm not rolling in dough. You know, I'm not, you know, Daddy Warbucks or Scrooge McDuck, but I wake up and do what I want, how I want.
So when people are looking to hire you, what are they looking to buy? Like, is it you as a host? Is it you as a photographer? Is it you as a brand strategist? Like, is it all of the above? Does it vary?
All of those
projects.
all of those things. Like I mentioned before, I'm a mixed bag, and I did it intentionally.
Yeah.
Because I'm big on try it. You never know until you try it, you know? So if a company approaches me and says, hey, we have a concept, can you do it? And it's within the realm of like my reality, yeah, I can do that. It may not be something that I've done over and over again, but like I'm positive I can take care and handle this for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, whether it's photography work, videography, light videography work, hosting, content creation, like you said, consulting, brand management, it really just depends on what they're looking for. But the bulk of what we do now is tourism marketing, to then use our platforms and collaboratively use their platforms to produce content that we can then deliver to the destinations. We call them DMOs, destination marketing organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So you like your Visit Norfolks, your Visit VBs, and all of those places. Perspective, and that's the biggest thing, because I think, again, being a man of color, having 2 kids, I've got a family. I'm a family man. I'm the typical American family man, but I'm not the typical American family man, you know? I'm relatable. People look at me as something that's approachable. And in that, I showcase things that I want people to recognize that are in their grasp. You know what I mean? Whether it's going hiking, going camping, canoeing, kayaking, is like, typically speaking, I didn't do that kind of stuff growing up. I always wanted to, and a lot of other people of color don't do these kinds of things because they think it's not for them. But we've seen a new insurgence of Black people outside, you know, and camping and hiking. And I love it, man, to be able to showcase this lifestyle with my kids and my love. And it's like, nah, bro, you can do this too. Pharrell said it. You can do it too.
Yes, absolutely. And I know your brother and his wife and their kids have been advocates for Black people spending time outside as well. They have an Instagram called Black People Need Sunscreen Too.
Yeah.
It's really great. They've also had partnerships with REI, and
Yep.
you know, the brand awareness around the Williams family continues to grow. So
That's right.
it's
That's right.
awesome to see, and it's so good to see you know, all the videos that you share on Instagram of you like interacting with different insects and you know, spending time in the outdoors with your kids, so you can provide that representation and awareness around environmental science and biology and all sorts of you know, fun science experiences that you can have in your own backyard or in your local park.
Yep. And that's exactly it. And that goes back to what I was saying before about like micro, macro, right? Mm-hmm. Sure, a trip to Canada or, you know, Sequoia National Park for me would be awesome. But there's a lot of things to see right here in my backyard. I found a snake in the front yard yesterday. I find snakes in the backyard. I just picked wild blackberries from the perimeter of this yard. A whole pint of blackberries that they just grow wild in my backyard. And I was like, this is dope. This is cool to say that I'm able to do this in my backyard. Again, I'm sitting outside, but I'm behind the camera is a tree, like a line of trees, and they're just swaying in the wind, you know? So there's so much to appreciate every day. It just takes that time to really like to teach yourself how to appreciate it. Oh, I totally forgot. Another way that helped me kind of like have this transition. I used to make, and I still do, it's been a while, but I make terrariums. Little terrariums that are like micro ecosystems, if you will. If you're familiar with terrariums, they're glass enclosures and you can put plants in them. Like a true terrarium can self-sustain on its own in that container, right? Mm-hmm. Where you think about like an ecosystem, it needs heat, water, and atmosphere. So even it gets down to like the microorganisms that are working together in that tiny little terrarium. I was able to put like a little world in my hand to then zoom in on the little details, the moss, you know, the tiny potato pill bugs that were crawling around inside the container, anything, and to see how it just worked together, you know. And it just brought me this new like idea again of what life is and what to appreciate about life, and to share that with my kids it was dope. So I totally forgot to mention that earlier.
Yeah, appreciate you calling that out.
Yeah.
So with Namarama getting so much business, I'm sure that can be at times difficult to manage by yourself. I was wondering if you've ever thought about scaling it up to include other creators such as yourself, so that it becomes more of like a branding agency or something like that.
So when I did that that commercial for that coffee company Vessel, we landed that because that was what we were working on doing. And this is years ago. We did that. Mike and we started another company. I forget the name of it. It's like an A Action, something like that. But that was the idea, was like to then be like that umbrella. And then when opportunities came our way, if we needed like to hire different creators to then come together to make the overall goal happen, we were going to do that. And then it just got muddy, you know. And I also realized with the events that I was doing as far as like munchie markets and things of that nature. And I'll revisit it, I'm sure, in the future. It's not an interest of mine right now, but working with certain people, and I would end up working harder for them than they were willing to work for themselves. And I just can't have that. You know what I mean? Whereas like, you want this, but yet I'm still checking you for what you're supposed to be doing and what you say you're going to do, but yet not doing it, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's I've learned to let this go. A lot of expectations of other people. That was a lot of my expectations of people, which has been a hard lesson too, to release those expectations. But not anytime soon do I see that coming about. We've got plans to develop other things in our near future that doesn't include you've been able to do with my brother. It's like, okay, he's about his craft. He wants this for himself. He's doing the work that it takes to get there. Especially with like our generation and the one beneath us, because I've got kids. A lot of these kids, they want it like that. They want it instantaneous and instant gratification. This takes work. You know what I mean? It takes work, and
it really does.
I love it.
It takes time to build something worth having. And,
Yep.
you know, with social media, you know, it is a very helpful tool, but it can sometimes provide a false sense of expectation.
Oh boy.
Especially when you see like major influencers blowing up on TikTok and, you know, getting all this money for their views by trying to go viral. That's the exception. That's not the norm, right? And if you want to build that, generally that doesn't happen overnight. It takes years of work, as you and I both know, being in our mid 30s, having chased this dream for like the past 10 years.
Yeah.
And we're both on our own journey. You're obviously further along in your career to where you want to be than I am, but that's okay, because I've made improvements along the way, as have you, and
it's just your path to life.
Yeah, it's your path to
life, man.
Throw it back.
Yep. Yeah. And that's why I say, like, I've always loved that brand and that tagline that you had, because it's true, man. And it goes to talk about what I was saying before, and I've had the encouragement of my lovely lady to remember not to minimize my experience, because other people are going through certain things that may be more strenuous than mine. Mm-hmm. But this is my path to life. That's your path to life, and everyone has the right to their own path to life. And we don't have any bearing or response, or people still talk and suggest things, but it's like, it's not your right to tell somebody how to live their life, right? And I've learned that most times, more times than not, someone who is giving suggestions or criticism on how someone carries themselves or how they proceed with their life don't really have a full grasp on themselves. They're projecting. It's like Jay-Z, all of our idols say it. Jay-Z at one point was like, even my uncle told me I'm not going to sell 1 million records. He's like, no, you're not going to sell 1 million records. I'm going to sell 1 million records. And what I do, I sold 1 million records. You got to believe in yourself. You got to believe in yourself. They tell us this in elementary school. Believe in yourself. Believe. But for real, believe in yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, why should anybody else believe in you?
Couldn't agree more. And I think that's a great place to end it. So if people want to connect with you, where can they do that?
Social media, first and foremost, Instagram, Facebook, Namarama. It's NOMARAMA supposed to be a mouthful. Nom, nom, nom. My email is contact@namarama.com. Google me. You can check me out through the city or through the state of Virginia. Anytime someone wants to reach out to me, I'm open. I love checking my messages. I get back to people within the same day. Anyone out there that thinks my energy is great and it wants to match it with what you got going on, holla at me. I love to learn about people and our differences. I love to connect and make cool things and have fun. Honestly, that's it. I love having fun and meeting people and making cool stuff.
You want to shout out your personal Instagram as well?
Yeah. Personal account is Jarrell, RELLJARRELL. Random stuff, bugs, snakes, inspirational quotes and things like that, memes. But yeah.
Love it. Thanks so much, Jarrell. It was great talking to you.
Appreciate it, Joe. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity. And seriously, dude, keep doing your thing, man. I recognize, like, at one point I tried to do a podcast, and it's a lot, bro. It's a lot.
It's a lot of work.
So keep going. You're doing a great job. Don't let anybody, not that you need to have me say this to you, but don't let anybody tell you you're not doing a great job. I'm proud of you. Keep it up, dude.
Welcome back to Evolve Podcast. We have Jarrell Williams here for part 2. We talked earlier this summer in July, I think it was, or August. And yeah, it's been a minute. So we're catching up on some things that we talked about and talking about what's new. And there are some new developments. So let's get into it.
Yeah, quite a few, man.
Yeah. So City with Bite season 3 came out, and I've got a few episodes. It looks great.
Oh, man,
very well produced. And like, how has the response been to that?
Oh, it's been great. City with Bite season 3 has been out for a bit now, and it's funny. I don't even remember when the last joint was. Response has been incredible. I don't know if we covered this or not last time we spoke. The city of Norfolk actually won an award off of that show from an organization called, I think it's called Destinations America, and they do this award, I think they said twice a year, and it's an international award, right? Where anyone can get it, and they only select 3 winners a year, and Norfolk actually won off of this show that I was part of.
Wow.
So it's been cool. I heard that people have actually moved to the city of Norfolk because of the show. It's one of those things where people gravitate toward it when they're looking for anything in the realm of food. So it's been really cool to walk around Norfolk and people recognize me to a certain extent, not to the point where I'm like, no, get out of my face type deal. It's endearing, you know, when they say, hey, aren't you, or that your voice sounds so familiar. So man, it's been dope. It's been super dope. I actually just finished up another project like maybe 2-3 weeks ago with a different organization, which is, I think, even cooler, to be honest. It's in the realm of like the things that brought me joy that I did when I was a kid, and I'm able to then re-explore them now. So it was a project with PBS, the Hampton Roads regional partner was WHRO. So it's an environmental science show, which is full blown my wheelhouse, you know, being outside and in the creeks and parks and whatnot. So it's a dream come true, man. Seriously.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that. I saw, I think, your post on LinkedIn when you started production on it. It's good to hear that it's done.
Through the high school. So it was a project specifically for high schoolers in environmental science. And with that, the goal I've heard from the team is that they want it to be picked up to then run continually outside of the classroom. I think it'll live online as like an online course for the beginning of it. And then, like I said, the goal is, and my hope is that it lands on local PBS, local WHRO, and just continues to run forever, you know?
Yeah. What schools will be showing the video?
Any high schools in the Hampton Roads,
Okay.
in that region of Virginia. So I'm not familiar with the names out there. I didn't go to high school there, but any of the high schools that are in the region of the Hampton Roads, 757, so like Norfolk, VB, Chesapeake, Suffolk, all those cats are going to get access to it. And again, it was cool because like prior to getting the opportunity, I had known internally that I was working towards getting out of this food guy realm, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking with my partner Heidi Joy about like, man, like what's my next move? What am I going to do next? And I just kind of sat for a bit, ruminating in the work that I've done. And then I've done work with WHRO in the past, and I've even pitched them a show or two. And then the producer, who's a good friend of mine, texted me. He was like, hey, this project just came in. We're still in talks, but you're the first person I thought about when this popped up. And I was like, talk to me. And he was like, long and short, it's an environmental science show. You're going to talk with scientists and teachers and this. And I was like, oh, sign me up. Like, sign me up. So we talked about it, figured out what I was going to be doing. And Joe, I've been going to state parks, hot air balloon rides. I've been flying in biplanes. I've been going to research facilities, talking to scientists about finfish and shellfish and learning about, estuaries. And I went to the zoo. I got to pet a rhino. I got to pet 100-year-old tortoises and feed giraffes, and I'm a homeschool educator. So to be able to, one, work with PBS and WHRO was like a dream come true. But two, to be able to work and produce content in the education, realm of things, of creation and creativity is like, again, I got into this Namarama business. It's just like a hobby to support local restaurants and business, and to see continually where I've been going and where I'm taking is just mind blowing, man. It seriously is mind blowing.
Yeah. It's amazing to see the journey and the evolution of, where it's taken you literally, not just in your life, but, different places around the country.
This mug, for example, is from the Corning, if you can see it, the Corning Museum of Glass in Corning, New York. We went and did a tour of the Finger Lakes. I want to say this was at least maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years. No, last summer, actually. And again, just that was like mind blowing to be like a local lover of Virginia and then get the opportunity to take off and leave Virginia and then still put my shine and spotlight and spin on my local love mentality. Mm-hmm. And in that, go to these different destinations with my partner and the boys, where Corning Glass Museum of New York is the largest glass museum in the world, dude. And again, to just take the boys and plop them in something like that and have them fully immersed in all this art and creation, it's just crazy.
Yeah. It's not only like sharing your love for, all these places with your audience, through the screen, but also your love with, the people you really care about, your partner and your kids, and, showing the next generation, what they could possibly do with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, to bring it back to the Spotlight Earth show, that's what it's called, the environmental science one. That, again, like you said, for the kids. Right. I grew up watching PBS programming. You know what I mean? I grew up on LeVar and, Sesame Street and all that. And then to now be like one of those cats, like I am very much so, I feel like I'm in my lane. I'm in my lane. I love education. I love learning new things. And I love being able to share what I've learned with other people, not just my kids, but anyone who will show an interest and actually want to listen. So,
yeah, I think it would be really cool if the two paths crossed with like food and science too. Like, obviously there's a science element to, food and, exploring that would be really interesting.
And look, nothing's off the table.
Yeah.
You know?
One of these days, like, I think like Jarrell's like science corner, you know, is going to be broadcast all over the place.
Soon enough. And it may even be called that. If I do, I'll give you credits on the name.
Yeah. Tap me as a producer. We'll talk.
Right.
So also, I can't not mention another major development since we last spoke is that Heidi Joy is now pregnant with your next child. Congratulations.
Yes. Thanks, man. Thank you. Yeah, dude. Super exciting, to say the least. It is. She's a little girl. She's gonna be a baby girl, my first baby girl. Heidi Joy's first, but she's an amazing bonus mom. So I know she's already an incredible mother. There's no question about it, no doubts. But yeah, it's been really exciting. As we mentioned, I'm in a multi-generational household right now. So like everyone is super stoked. Everyone is super excited. So we're all working together, shifting things around. We actually are turning the basement into like a suite, if you will, for the time being, which I'm so grateful for, to have parents who are open to the idea of bringing me and my kids home, let alone like my partner and our new child together. It is an incredible opportunity. And I always look at it as like, I'm so grateful. I'm just full of love and gratitude that I still have both my parents, and they are, again, open to the idea of me coming back home and being here. And yeah, man, it's a great life, Joe. It really is, dude.
Sounds beautiful. Sounds like a really like integral, community that is lacking in so many people's lives, you know?
Yes.
Like as a society, we were created to live in community with other people. That like tribalism is, lost in society because we're also segregated and may not have the best relationship with our families. So it's very unique to hear about, families such as yours that are still able to have that multi-generational aspect and love and, come from that place of gratitude.
Yeah, it's incredible. Funny enough, like when we first were talking about coming back, it was only going to be like a launch, like a landing pad within travels and whatnot. So I don't know if we talked about this or not, prior to moving at my parents, we were traveling. We were never home. And it was like, all right, well, I'm not going to pay rent at a spot that I'm never going to be at. So we left the house back in Norfolk. And then at the time, the boys were with their mom for school. So we did homeschool. And then she approached me and said, I want to get them in public school. So I was like, all right, cool. Like I did homeschool for 2 years. That's cool. You do that, take care of that. We're gonna still keep doing what we're gonna do over here. It didn't work out for her. They were there for like 2 months and then got the boys. And then we ended up staying here. And my mom and dad were like, look, don't stress. Like y'all are more than welcome here. And initially I was like, man, I'm not, I don't want to be back at home. But then I thought about it, like, again, like you said yourself, just how much of a blessing it is that my kids get to now see their grandparents like every day. We get to have sometimes breakfast, lunch, and dinner together, and then like they get to just seeing them every day is like Heidi Joy tells them often, like she only has one of her grandparents still alive and they're all the way in the Philippines. You know what I mean? And it's like these kids wake up every day. Good morning, Nanny, or good night, Nanny. Good night, Pop. And see them throughout the day. Right now, my mom is actually running out because we're on this call to get them Chick-fil-A for Leo's birthday. So it's like Nanny gets a surprise, y'all. Blah 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 blah. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's great. I didn't have the closest relationship with my grandparents. My grandparents on my mom's side, I knew the best. because they lived in Hampton when we lived in Virginia Beach, and we saw them more frequently.
Yeah.
With my dad, my grandfather on my dad's side passed away I think before I was born or soon after I was born, so I don't really know. I never really knew him. And my grandmother, we would see her like once a year, if that. Of course, I love her from my memory of her. All my grandparents are now deceased, but it just makes me think about like that presence and how valuable that is, and in cultivating those relationships so that your kids know those people and remember those people for who they were and who they were to them.
Yeah.
And so it's really great that you can give that to your boys and to your daughter as well.
Right, which is weird to hear still.
I'm sure you're getting used to it, right?
My mom was like, "You're no longer a boy dad. You can't say that anymore." I was like, "No, I'm just a dad."
Yeah, a whole nother level. And I'm sure there's a lot of, growth and discomfort that comes along with that too. But, knowing you, I'm sure you'll lean right into it.
Oh yeah. Like I said, I'm stoked. Like I already see her now with like pink tutu, but we in the mud. You know what I mean? Like making mud pies, and we joke about her being a little girl when she's wandering around and I got a frog in my pocket. It's like that's how we are with the boys. Like this is gonna be no different with my daughter. So
I'm sure Jamal and his girls are super excited for you guys too.
Yeah. I can't wait. Like for all of us to get together and just go do stuff. I'm so hyped.
That's awesome. I saw you really revamped the Namarama website. It looks great.
Thanks, man.
And I also noticed on there Joy Love. Can you talk to me about that? And
yeah,
I know that's more like Heidi Joy's side of the business, and I want her to speak to that at some point. But can you share with me what that's about?
Would love to. Heidi Joy Love is her brand, which she's been growing, developing, working in for over a decade. She comes from coordination. She's done wedding planning and wedding coordinating for over a decade, and she's done events, and she's opened $1 million theater, Zyder's Dream Theater in Virginia Beach. And her resume is bananas, dude. It's bananas. But what I've said since I've known her is like, people are familiar with what you've done, but I think it's time for us to kind of reintroduce. Like this is the reintroduction of Heidi Joy Dela Cruz.
Mm-hmm.
So Heidi Joy Love is her brand, and in that she is an artist in multi capacities, multiple mediums, whether it be assemblage and music. She's gotten featured at the Virginia Museum of Contemporary Arts in Virginia Beach, and she's hosted workshops for the Power of Play. And she's she's an amazing artist, and she does watercolor work, and she's a writer, and she's dude. I mean, she's an incredible woman, and I could go on and on and on, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So with that idea of the reintroduction of Heidi Joy, we already had the Namarama website, right? And she had a huge presence on there, from photos to the blogs. And I said, well, what happens if we just put like a landing page about Heidi Joy Love and yourself, again, for this reintroduction, so that when people are going to Namarama, they can learn more about who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been cool because like since we've been together, she's even said herself that she has been able to create just so much art within the past like 3-4 years that she's never even like scratched the surface on it. I mean, she's always been a creator. Don't get me wrong. She's always created, but she said, I've like stickers and buttons and pins and all kind of stuff, just like pieces that have been, like I said, been featured, and her writing. And it's cool just to be a cheerleader. I said to her at one point, I'm looking forward to when things for you start popping off and you're traveling and I just have the babies like either at home or we are behind the curtain while you're on stage talking about stuff, or we're at your gallery exhibit and we are just a proud family, super supportive with signs, cheering you on. And I mean that, like, I don't get any problem with my ego or anything about that when she starts getting stuff more for her. And I look forward to the day that she is the breadwinner and she is the one out there. Hey, babe, I'm out here. I'm cleaning. I'm cooking. You come on back home. Like, I'm looking forward to it. And again, it's coming because she is an incredible, incredible woman.
Does she have her own website where she keeps her work?
She has a website that she created overnight when she was, so before we got together, she had taken off to New York for an opportunity. And prior to that, she had no resume, no website or anything. So she like stayed up that night, I think did an all-nighter and put like a resume website together. It's not the prettiest, but it has like stacks of just her experience. And I was like, this is before we were together. I was like, that's impressive that you could just bust this out.
Yeah.
So outside of that, unfortunately not, aside from like LinkedIn and stuff, but so that's what the website's going to continue to do, is going to showcase more of her work. And we are working on a gift shop. So Heidi Joy will have a Heidi Joy Love gift shop, and I'll have a few things sprinkled in there, but the focus is going to be for her to be able to produce multiple things or set like special items. Artwork will be displayed on there, all kind of stuff. So that's coming soon. But yeah.
So what does the future look like for Namarama and for Jarrell Williams? Like, not just like projects, but like, have you ever thought about like, am I outgrowing the brand Namarama?
I go back and forth, right? Where I think of like outgrowing, what does that really mean? Because I'm a big proponent of, you can change directions and interests at any moment in time. So like Namarama is still very much so around like exploration, and creativity and all of those things, and supporting people who have ideas and again, it cheerleading those individuals who go for and bet for self. While I may not always be eating something in front of the camera, I'm always eating for my mind. You feel what I'm saying? I'm always feeding my brain. I'm always feeding my soul and my spirit with whatever it is, interactions like this, or going to a museum, diving into a state park or a city park and just fully immersing myself in that. So very much so hungry, may not always be hungry for food, but I'm always hungry for adventure and all those other funny things I just mentioned. I've been really mindful with like spending my time fully intentionally focusing on my next few moves, right? If you've been following my Instagram, it's just one avenue of distribution of information, of course.
Yeah.
I don't really talk about food anymore because I still get people who hit me up like, yo, like, where's this? Where's that? It's like, I haven't done food content in over a year. You know what I mean? I may post the occasional, I made this tonight, it looks delicious, but I'm not out there checking out chefs. And again, I don't mean this to say like that's my old life. It's never going to be me, but where I am now, if I'm not fully feeling like it, like passionate about it, I don't have any interest in doing it. And then personally, my life has changed. I don't go out to eat as often as I once did. 3 kids will definitely change that, and really recognizing that like my diet has changed. I don't eat a lot of things that I used to eat. And I think it's because I've gotten older, my body changed and all and you can attest to that too, right? Where things just, your body changes and your mindset changes and your lifestyle will change. So I work a lot in the idea of like mindfulness and been focusing a lot on like inner peace and focusing a lot on, and again, that intention, but just continually being the individual that I've always been to encourage other people to really bet on themselves. And a lot of that starts from doing what they call shadow work, right? Where you have internal thoughts of doubt or whatever it may be, where it's like, well, where did those thoughts come from? Like really sit with yourself and kind of think about, well, what do I like to do? What are things that are interesting to me? So with that being said, I encourage people with my work now to disconnect from stimuli. It can be your phone, TV, your family, anybody or anything that is in certain respects not preventing you, but in certain cases clouding your sense of judgment on what things you like to do. Because it's not intentional, and it's not to be mean when I say this, but like, we are encouraged to appreciate or do certain things every day from so many different directions. Again, TV, your phone, radio, even your family. Why are you doing this? Why don't you try this? You should try this. Binge watch this show. But what I've learned over the past couple of years is, once I like minimize, and it's an easy way to describe it as distractions, right? But I hate saying distractions because distractions can be good. But when you look at it, we are pulled in so many different directions every day. But when you give yourself that time to just be and just sit still and not have to think for somebody or do things for somebody, it's like, well, what comes to mind? You know, what kind of things come when you're able to sit by yourself in silence, or hearing birds chirping fly by and the wind blowing in the trees? Like, what comes to mind, like, and I think that will then start getting people's gears turning on, okay, what do I want to do? What do I like to do? And in that, finding that confidence of self to say, well, I'm allowed to try this because I'm interested in it, and more discovery in that respect.
Yeah. I mean, so much to unpack there.
Yeah.
I just want to let that simmer a little bit.
It's cool because, like, again, with the shift from being the food guy, right, where I'm doing an experiment with my Instagram where I'm not posting anything food related. I'm just doing things that are like nature-based, wellness, and mindfulness and mindset, just to see what the algorithm will do, right?
Yeah.
And out the gate, Joe, I've been posting about parks, and I've always wanted to just be reshared on the Virginia State Parks Instagram account. For however many years I've been going to parks and all this stuff and posting on Namarama, it never happened. I think a week or so in, they shared my joint on their story twice. And I was just like, well, that's cool. It's like, I don't do things for the validation of others, right? But when you do things that are true to yourself and true to your passions, and these kind of things that are validating points and actions come about, it's great. It feels nice. So again, to just be posting about these things as an experiment, and to see that, like, one of the brands that I've always sought out to have them notice me has noticed me, and yeah, it's been cool. So that's just one example. And in that, like, doing more with getting family first outside, and friends, close friends of mine who I know are super hard workers, and family people who are very much so deserving of a break, if you will, just encouraging them, to remind them, like, yo, take time for self. I see you working, taking care of your family, and you're providing people an ability to take care of their families, but take care of yourself too. Self-care is the best care, and it's not selfish at all.
Yeah. And I know you've been talking online about practicing self-care, spending time in nature, being kind to yourself, something that I also am a big proponent of. And I'm sure that has really helped with changing your perspective on where you want your career to be going, and like what's important,
Yeah.
So do you feel like the brand Namarama represents like who you are now?
I think so. The only caveat to that is my logo's a burger. You know what I mean? But outside of that, when I first came out the gate with Namarama, no one knew what it was anyway. Mm-hmm. So it took me explaining it either verbatim, face to face, or explanation through showing them with content. So it's like, that's where I'm at now. It's like, I love the logo still. I love the name still. And again, I'm still very much so hungry. It may not always be hungry for food, but again, hungry for knowledge, hungry for adventure, hungry for inspiration. So it's a way that I'm flipping it to a certain extent. and again, this idea of like outgrowing a brand. And you mentioned earlier, it's a matter of perspective. You know what I mean? I feel like anyone can do anything, and a name is just in certain. And I don't mean this entirely, but a name is just a name to a certain extent. You can name something one thing and do something completely opposite, and it will still work. It really just depends on like your perspective and how you approach it, and being true to yourself. To be honest, I'm not faking the funk or anything. I'm not pretending to be something that I'm not. And I felt like I was when I continued to be the food guy, and I wasn't the food guy like that anymore. And that's when I was like, this is not for me. I don't want to continue down this path. And again, I had people asking me, well, where's the hottest creating and they see Heidi Joy creating. And then here at my parents' house, they see my parents creating, you know. Again, that idea of like being in this multi-generational household and having just so much creativity everywhere. I tell them often too, it's like, yeah, you know, daddy was the food guy, but like nowadays I love climbing trees, and we go on our trail hikes and we get to look under the logs and we get to talk about the different kinds of bugs and all this stuff. It's cool, man. It's really dope.
That's awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you again, Jarrell. Really great talking to you. Love
Thank you.
our conversations that we have, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Thank you so much, man. I saw the message and I was like, sign me up. I was like, yeah, there's a lot that's changed, and I'm excited in the direction that I'm going because I just feel it. You know, that's people talk about, you feel, do what feels right, do what feels good. And I feel really good. I'm excited for the future, excited for this new development for my family, and excited for everyone to experience exponential growth this year and really, really tap into things that bring you joy. You are deserving of it. Your ideas are amazing. And if you can put time and energy and effort, typically speaking, 9 hours a day for somebody else's vision and their dream and their goals, you owe yourself at minimum an hour a day of exploration within the things that you enjoy.
Thanks for watching Evolved Podcast. Follow at evolvedpodcast.co on Instagram for weekly updates. Subscribe to Evolved Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and like your favorite episodes. Production and editing by Joe Fitzpatrick. Our theme music, Endless Cruise, is written and performed by Fingers, spelled F1NG3RS.